Hey guys, what's going on? Rodolfo here. I just finished watching the WWDC keynote. It just wrapped up. It was a packed one, so let's talk about it. There is just a lot of stuff that they showed. So in this video, I'm just going to talk about my favorite ones and the ones that I think are the most important for developers. The first thing that they talked about was FaceTime. They showed a lot of stuff to compete with Zoom and Google Meet, including spatial audio, a very impressive background noise blocking, wide spectrum, portrait mode, a web version of FaceTime so you can do it with people on Windows and Android. There is a grid view, there are links that you can create for later and share with people for future meetings. But probably my favorite and the most impressive one and the first API that they showed. So now you're gonna be able to be on a FaceTime call and share music or share something that you're watching with someone, and it's gonna be completely in sync. You can watch a show with a friend. And we've seen that implemented on an app per app basis, but not in a FaceTime call like this. And that includes an API that apps like Disney Plus or Netflix, whoever wants to use it can use it, and it's gonna be the same API for any app that wants to use it. Which is nice because it's probably gonna provide a more standard and concise experience. They also showed some sharing stuff for iMessage, so if someone sends you a link, it's gonna be on your news app, shared with you for you to read later, which is very nice for the times when something is shared with you but you can't get to it at that second. And then they showed something called focus or a focus mode, which is one of the things that I was most interested in. This is something that I've always wanted from iOS, like a way that I can set up my phone during business hours and I can get like the apps that I use during work time easier to reach, and blocks stuff like social media and distracting things like that. So with this focus thing, you're gonna be able to create profiles like that for when you're at work, when you're at home, and it's gonna set up the do not disturb and notification preferences and what apps are in the home screen, all that based on the focus profile that you're on at that time. It also includes a notification summary, so you can separate what are important notifications like messages from friends and family to things like ad notifications from Uber or other apps like that. Next was a section that they called intelligence, and there were two main things in this that really blew my mind. The live text, especially in photos, so you can see a phone number in a photo and you can tap it and you can call that number, or you can select that text, copy and paste somewhere to look up the name of a restaurant that is in a photo or something like that. And there is visual lookup, which is objects in photos that you can get more information about, like the breed of a dog or a specific piece of information about an object in that photo. You're gonna be able to look it up. Next, they had a wallet section, so they're building more and more into wallet. Last year we saw something about car keys, and now you're gonna be able to have your house keys, your hotel keys, and that also probably means a lot of new APIs for manufacturer of locks and hotel apps to integrate with these new keys functionalities. And there were also identity cards, and I think that's probably gonna be something else that requires governments to get involved and implement those APIs as well. Then we have weather and maps, which are basically just more data and visual enhancements. The most interesting one that I found was in maps. It's gonna be able to show you crosswalks, interchanges in highways, so more information for you to navigate better. And the coolest one was for transit, so you will now be able to use AR to get directions in and out of subway stations and things like that, which is always confusing, especially when you're traveling, when you're a tourist. That's nice to see. Then they moved on to AirPods. There are some nice enhancements here. So there's conversation boost to help boost voices that are talking to you and block background noises. Siri will now be able to announce notifications just as it was able to do with messages. And there are some additions to Find My to help you not lose or find your AirPods if you misplace them. So for the iOS part of the presentation, that was pretty much it. There's nothing like a really big revolutionary iOS 7 type of change, but those were nice incremental changes that, especially the focus thing in the profiles, I thought that was very nice and I can't wait to get my hands on those. Next was iPadOS, and here's where I hoped and I thought that we might see some revolutionary changes. We saw the M1 iMac last month and we thought, you know, maybe iPadOS was going to bring a big overhaul to make the most out of that chip. So in that sense, I think the iPadOS announcement was a bit of a letdown. There were some very nice incremental things there, but not to the level that we were expecting, I think. The first thing was widgets, but this just pretty much brings it on par with what we saw on the iPhone last year. You can now arrange widgets anywhere you want. You can put them anywhere you want. You can create larger widgets. You can have the app library, and it's going to have a shortcut on the dock to make it more accessible. And then there was multitask, which is probably the place that we hoped for huge changes, and there wasn't a lot. There's a new contextual menu to help you assign whether you want an app full screen or you want it in split screen or slide over. And probably the best thing was the shelf. So now you can make combinations of multitask app pairings in split screen and save those and move between those easier in a way to easily see your home screen and go back to a multitasking arrangement that you had on screen. And you will have new shortcuts for multitasking, keyboard shortcuts, but that doesn't seem to amount to a lot. Now, I haven't played with it yet, but from what I could see in the presentation, it still felt like you're trying to do things with your hands tied. It didn't seem like a big overhaul of multitasking that we were hoping for. There are new features for the Translate app. My favorite one was the auto translate. So you can just start speaking and it's gonna recognize what language is that and translate back and forth to whatever other language is being detected in the conversations. And you don't need to like speak, hit a button, and then the other person speaks and hit a button and then it translates. It should make these kinds of translations for when you're traveling more seamless. And then there was probably the biggest announce for developers on iPad. We're not getting Xcode on iPad yet, but we are going to be able to build apps and ship those apps to the App Store using Swift Playgrounds, which is amazing. I am not completely sure if it's Swift UI dependent or if you can do it with UIKit apps, but basically, if you want, you can now start a project, code, and ship an entire app to the App Store using just your iPad. I really wanted them to do the same for Final Cut and be able to have a desktop at home and only have an iPad, no need for a MacBook anymore, and you know, when I'm traveling or something like that, I could edit videos and work on my apps on the iPad. We're not there yet, but at least coding is now possible. Next was a section on privacy. There's a bunch of stuff for Mail, there's a bunch of stuff for Safari, including the fact that they're now going to hide your IP address. There's an app privacy report card like they had on Safari for the web, so you're gonna know if an app is trying to access information and sharing that. And the most interesting one was about Siri. It will now have on-device speech recognition, so not only that's more private, but it should make things like asking for alarms and things like that way faster because it's all on device and you can do it offline. You don't need an internet connection for that anymore. Next was iCloud. They are making it easier for you to recover your data if you lose your password. But the biggest thing was iCloud Plus. So if you have an iCloud subscription, a paid subscription, that's now going to be an iCloud Plus. And what they're doing is basically launching their own VPN service. It's gonna have a relay that's gonna hide where you're from, browsing the internet. It's gonna be able to hide your email, so you're gonna be able to create sort of like an alias that you can use to sign up for something, and then you can just delete that and not get spam anymore. There are a bunch of new things for health. It can track your mobility to see changes that might indicate your risk of falling. You can see lab results. You can share health data with doctors and family. That's all really, really nice. watchOS was probably, to me at least, the one that received the fewest updates. It has a new Breathe mindfulness app, sleep respiratory rate, a few new workout modes, a new portraits watch face, and a whole new things for a photo app. I don't know who uses the photo app on their watch, but if you do, that's gonna be good news for you. Next is a section for home stuff. So now you're gonna be able to use the HomePod Mini as the sound for your Apple TV, like you could with the bigger size HomePods that were discontinued. You can also ask your HomePod to play a movie or a show on your Apple TV. HomePod is getting voice recognition, so if you come to the HomePod and ask, hey, send a message, it's gonna know that it's you, and it's gonna send the message from your Apple ID and your phone number and not from your mom's phone number. Third-party devices are getting Siri, so you can come up to your thermostat and ask to increase or decrease the temperature. It's gonna relay the information to the HomePod or to the Apple TV to process that request. So that's nice because those devices are getting that capability, but they're not keeping the data, they're just relaying to the HomePod. There's also this new Matter standard API that they're announcing, that HomeKit things are going to be able to use that in a more standard and private way and use Siri and all those things, but in a way that is standard for all the HomeKit devices. So hopefully that means that we're gonna get more HomeKit devices. It's very common to see smart devices that support Alexa or the Google Assistant and don't support HomeKit. Hopefully that standard will make it easier for manufacturers to adopt HomeKit as well. Next was macOS, which is now going to be called Monterey. I don't know if that's going to be macOS 12 or 11.1. I didn't catch that during the presentation. But it's going to have a lot of the same stuff as iOS and iPadOS with regards to FaceTime, SharePlay, the focus modes, but they also announced something really cool called Universal Control. So now when you have your iPad next to your Mac, you can go with your mouse from the Mac to the iPad and control the mouse cursor on the iPad with your MacBook trackpad, and also type stuff, use the Mac keyboard for the iPad, and it's almost as an extended display, but it's not another display. It's actually controlling the iPad OS on iPad. You're gonna be able to drag and drop files from the iPad to the Mac, and it even works with two Macs and an iPad. So they showed the mouse cursor going from one Mac, then to the other Mac, then to the iPad, and dragging a file back to the first Mac. There's now AirPlay to the Mac, which is something that always frustrated me. Like, I'm watching something on the iPhone and I just wanna AirPlay it to my Mac. Now I'm gonna be able to do that. There was a big Safari redesign. It looks fantastic, honestly, like much cleaner. The tabs with their own address bar. But the thing that I was most excited about was being able to save and create groups of tabs and be able to share entire groups of tabs, open them in different places, being able to save the tabs I'm working with at the end of a work day and pick them up on the next day without needing to leave my Mac on. But probably one of the most interesting things for developers and people who love automation is that we are finally getting shortcuts on the Mac. And they said it's a transition. So for now, Automator is still going to work and Shortcuts is going to support Automator actions. I didn't see anything about supporting AppleScript or anything like that. I hope it does. And it is system-wide. You're going to be able to access and run and create shortcuts from anywhere, which which might even help shortcuts on iPhone. I've always found it a bit of a hassle to create the shortcuts on smaller screens. So maybe now we can create shortcuts on the Mac with the larger screen and then run those on iOS. If that's possible, that's gonna be very, very nice. Last but not least, and probably one of the most important sections for this channel, are the developer technologies. So this is something that they usually just brush over during the keynote and offer more details on the platform's State of the Union. So I'm gonna try to make a separate video for that. I'm gonna watch the State of the Union and then probably make another video soon. But on the keynote, they talked about new APIs that include the share play and widgets that we talked about, the focus mode, and they also showed off object capturing, which was very interesting. So you're gonna be able to take photos with your iPhone of an object and bring those to Cinema 4D and easily create a 3D model of the real object that you were taking pictures of. And if that works as advertised, that's gonna be like a game changer for AR stuff on the iPhone, because that's usually the hardest and most expensive thing to do. So if you can just snap pictures of an object and create a 3D model out of that, that's amazing. They also talked a little bit about Swift and concurrency. So you're now gonna have async and await functions. It should be easier to handle asynchronous tasks in Swift. They talked about the App Store. If you were expecting them to drop the 30% cut or being able to use other payment processors for in-app purchases or things like that, that was not in the keynote. In light of the antitrust things that have been going on and the Epic lawsuit, people were expecting that maybe there would be a nod in this direction. That was not what happened. They basically just announced custom product pages, so you will now be able to A/B test icons and screenshots and things like that. You can have more than one product page for different users, and you're gonna be able to showcase in-app events. So if you have some sort of event in your app, like seasons of a game, or if it's a movie on Disney Plus or something like that, they're gonna be able to showcase that in the App Store and even in the App Store widget on the home screen. They showed off something called Xcode Cloud, which is basically a CI service. You're gonna be able to build your app in the cloud and run tests parallelized in different devices and things like that. And then you're going to be able to distribute it for testing and to the App Store using this cloud service. That brings with it Test Flight for Mac, which is something that Mac developers have been clamoring for a long time. It's finally here, and that was what they announced. It was a really packed keynote. I liked most of it. I think that was a very, very solid WWDC keynote. I think it pushes the envelope in terms of making devices work more in sync with each other, having workflows more integrated between devices. But I do think that there were some notable omissions. There was no hardware. People were expecting new MacBooks. That was not present. There was no pro apps for iPad, no Final Cut, no Logic. And I don't know if the new multitasking things are going to be enough to make the iPad more usable for as a productivity device. But more than anything, I was hoping for some sort of nod from Apple in terms of repairing some of the damaged relations with developers that have been going on. Something in terms of the 30% cut. I wasn't really hoping for being able to use other payment processors, but I don't know. Something that would acknowledge all the antitrust and lawsuits that have been going on. Something that would be a step in fixing that coming from Apple itself, and we didn't see that. But overall, I thought it was a great keynote. I'm excited to try out the new stuff. I might get the betas on an old iPhone that I have and on my iPad. I would not recommend anyone installing those in your main devices, but I'll get those on my old devices, and if I find stuff that is interesting, I'm gonna come show to you guys. So what did you guys think? Did you get your WWDC wishes? Was there something that they didn't announce that you were hoping to see? Let me know in the comments. If you like this video, leave a thumbs up. It really does help the channel a lot. Subscribe to get more videos like this and videos on iOS development, tech in general, productivity. Hit the notification bell to be alerted next time I post, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye.